Hi guys, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today's video is going to be a big book haul between all of the incredible new releases I've had my eye on and picking up some books that I've just been meaning to for a long time. The amount of books I have to show off today have gotten a little bit out of hand, but nonetheless, I'm so excited about all of the titles. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. The first set of books I'm going to show off are the May Selects for Book of the Month, who I'm also partnering up with for this video. If you're for some reason not familiar, Book of the Month is an online bookish subscription service, which every single month they curate a selection of books from a variety of different genres, always new releases, always hardcover, and sent directly to your door. Either if you're a fantasy lover or a thriller lover, they will have something for you. It's super easy to skip if you're not interested in any of the titles that month, but I of course have an offer code for you guys. If you use the code Peruse Project, you're able to get your first box for only $9.99. Now for the month of May, there was so many fantastic titles to pick from the add-ons to the main selections. It was incredibly hard to narrow down to 5 titles to quickly show off, but I was able to do it, so let's just go ahead and chat about them. First 2 books I'm just going to quickly mention, the first one being Yerba Buena by Nina LaCour. I love Nina LaCour's writing. I've read many of her YA novels, and this is actually her adult contemporary debut, which I think is super cool. Particularly, this story follows 2 women as they are both searching for love and a place to call home. I'm sure the writing is going to be astonishingly beautiful, and I'm so excited to have this one. Next up is a cute contemporary option, and that is Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. This is an adorable rom-com meet cute style story following a young woman who's basically trying to make her own way in the world, separate herself from her family expectations, and pursue things that she is passionate about. This leads her to baby goats, grilled cheese, and also a cute and handsome carpenter. And from there, I believe we watch a love story unfold. I love having contemporary stories on hand, especially when I need a bit of a pick-me-up, and this sounds adorable. The next 3 books are for sure my personal favorite selects for the month, and I'm so excited about all of them. The first is a book I'm sure many of you guys are also excited about as well, and that is Book of Night by Holly Black. This is Holly Black's adult fantasy debut, and it's essentially an urban fantasy story following our main character Charlie, who is essentially an ex-con. She's very skilled at stealing things from other people, but she has decided to leave that life behind, and now she's just trying to keep her head down, be a bartender, support her sister, and just try to make a life for herself. She lives in a world where something called shadow magic exists. Essentially, people can use the power of their shadows in different ways and wield them with different abilities, and this is also kind of intermeshed with a murky black market and underworld in which she used to work. She has been successfully kind of keeping herself out of trouble until a murky figure from her past reappears, and she finds herself kind of in a one last job scenario. This has some good angst. It has some really great ambiance and interesting magic system. I'm really excited to have this in my hands. Again, one of my most anticipated releases. Next book I'm so excited to add to my shelf is Darling Girl by Liz Mikulski. This is a Peter Pan retelling, reimagining. I love a reimagining of any classic tale. Give it to me, I'm excited about it. But this is basically following a woman who has to take on the infamous Peter Pan, who is not the innocent adventurer the fairy tales make him out to be, to save her daughter's life. But yes, this story centers Wendy's granddaughter, who is essentially trying to make the best out of her life despite some of the hardships she has faced. She has children, she's running a successful business, but when one of her children, who has been struggling with a rare heart condition, disappears, she knows it's Peter, and she has to turn to people from her past to try to get her back from him. This just sounds like a really interesting reimagining of a well-known tale. I'm really curious to see sort of an adult version of Peter Pan, making the magic a bit more sinister. I'm very curious about this one. And the last book you're able to select from sounds so good. I absolutely cannot wait to pick it up. And that is the La Hacienda by Isabel Cañas, and this just sounds like so many things I love. This is said to be Mexican Gothic meets Rebecca, and it says to be a suspense thriller set in the aftermath of the Mexican Revolution. Follow our main character, who after the tragic passing of her father decides to take up a hand in marriage with a man who, despite some grim rumors about what happened to his last wife, decides to go for it for a chance of security for her future. But once she arrives at her new home, things begin to get rather murky, especially when voices and visions begin to invade our main character Beatrice's dreams. I Love the concept of this. It sounds dark and suspenseful. I particularly love Rebecca / its connection to Jane Eyre. Like all of these things I am really intrigued by. This just sounds so good, and I'm so excited to add it to my shelf. Alrighty guys, those are all of the May selects I'm gonna be showing off this month, but there are even more to choose from. So if you guys are curious, be sure to click the link below to see all of Book of the Month's May selections, as well as use my coupon code. But let's go ahead and dive into the rest of the books I've picked up recently. Again, I have kind of a hodgepodge of new and old releases. The first book I got used for a very good price when I realized I didn't own it, which I found to be unacceptable, and that is Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare. I love the Last Hour series by Cassandra Clare. In fact, I think it's my favorite trilogy of hers yet. I owned the sequel. I think I was given the ARC and then I just never bought a finished copy. So when I found the collector's first edition for such a good price used, I immediately picked it up to add to my shelves. But the Last Hour series is kind of set in the turn of the century, and it has the classic makeup of Cassandra Clare stories, wherein which we're following a huge cast of characters, many different points of views. We follow their angst, their romance, and their drama of their everyday lives, but also we follow them as they try to save their families, themselves, and the city in which they live in from demise, from demons, and the like. This is set in London, and it has all the great trappings of like the social expectations, the social standards, which adds a lot of drama with the fun and intensity of an urban fantasy story. It's just delightful, and just, I swear, Cassandra Clare gets better and better with every book she puts out. I love this. I wanted the first one because I actually feel like this will be a series I will reread, and big fan all around. Next is a book I recently showed off in my TBR because it's on my TBR for the month, and that is The Mysterious Benedict Society by Trenton Lee Stewart. This is another book I picked up used when I saw it for a great price because I wanted to start the reread process of this. This is a series I remember loving when I was a kid, but honestly, I don't remember much of what happened, and I haven't re-encountered it in such a long time, but it seems quirky and weird, and that combination tends to be one of my favorite when it comes to middle grade. But essentially, this book's synopsis goes as follows. There's an ad in the paper that went, "Are you a gifted child looking for special opportunities? Many children apply, but only 4 were chosen to go on a very strange and unusual quest." And we follow those young children as they basically do just that. This is a many book series, and I'm hoping it's just charming and will sweep me away, and it'll just be like an easy and fun read. I just love middle grade. I think it's just so delightful. Next book I picked up was a pre-order that came in the mail, and that is The Bone Orchard by Sarah A. Mueller. This book, again, also just sounds like a combination of a story that I'm gonna love. Weird, dark, enchanting, dreamlike, all of the adjectives that personally just like make up an atmospheric story that I can't put down. It's honestly hard to even give the synopsis of this book because I feel like the synopsis does it best itself, but the beginning part of it says, "Tucked away behind a notorious house of ill repute, there is a garden where the trees are grown from bones and nourished by the darkest of secrets. The clattering, ghastly harvest is tended to by women who live and work at the orchard house. And in this bone house also lives the emperor's personal concubine, and there he visits her frequently. Till one day he summons her to the palace itself to give her his dying decree, which is to choose which of his horrible sons is going to inherit the throne." I mean, we have a house tended to by women where they grow an orchard made from bones. We have a concubine who's now thrust into the midst into political upheaval as people are struggling to grab for power. And we follow our main character Charm, who's choosing between vengeance and her own personal path and destiny as well. All of this sounds amazing. I really cannot wait to pick this book up. Next up is not a book of fiction, but nonetheless a book that I'm still really excited to add to my collection and show off. It's actually a cookbook, and that is Korean American by Eric Kim. I'm trying to become more of a cookbook girly. I picked up Molly Baz's cookbook recently, and I've been really enjoying like flicking through it, getting inspiration. So I'm trying to pick up more cookbooks and just use them as a way to challenge myself in the kitchen. I really enjoy cooking. I really enjoy cooking things from all over, and I just really wanted more material to be able to reference in my hand. Plus, I love cookbook photography. Like, I could flip through cookbooks all day and just stare at the pictures of all the food. I was really excited about this one in particular because I really like Eric. I follow his recipes, so I was really looking forward to his new cookbook that has just recently come out, so I knew I wanted to grab it myself. This is obviously inspired by a lot of the recipes he ate growing up and also kind of presents new and interesting twists on them. I'm really excited to explore this and try some new dishes, and also really hoping to continue to expand my own cookbook collection because I love them. I could stand in a bookstore all day just staring at them forever. They bring me a lot of joy. Next is another really big pre-order I'm looking to picking up soon because I loved the first one so much, and that is The Hunger of Gods by John Gwen. This is book 2, the first one being The Shadow of the Gods, which is the beginning of an incredibly brutal, like Viking-inspired multi-POV epic fantasy story. I enjoyed the bleak and stark ride that was book 1. It was not only fascinating to be placed in the world, but all of these different characters living disparate lives, like slowly watching their fates become intertwined was so cool, and the ending was wild, to say the least. If you really love kind of more individual quest-like stories, really intricately written combat, John Gwen, this series particularly, is a great one to check out. The first one basically follows, I want to say, 4 main POVs. Mother who's on her own quest for vengeance, a few other people like we're trying to find their fame and fortune in certain warrior bands, and some other murky characters. A lot of this is tied to the gods themselves, as this sort of Viking-inspired landscape was once ruled by the gods, but they have since died, but the relics of their like corpses can be used for power. And there's also in general a political shift that is occurring in this land, kind of changing from small towns controlling themselves to individuals who are trying to combine these many small towns and areas of power that they can then rule. It's so interesting, it's brutal, it's bloody. I loved the first one so much, and I can't wait to pick up book 2. Next up, we have a release that again shouldn't be too much of a surprise, and that is Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel. I love Emily St. John Mandel's writing. I've read her past 2 books, so obviously I was very thrilled that a 3rd book was coming out. What's really cool about her literary fiction stories, outside of the fact that they're wonderfully written, full of a lot of disparate point of views that kind of come together in a really satisfying of way, but they're also all kind of connected in the same universe, which from an execution point of view is super interesting. And as a fan of her books and her work, it's really fun to see the different Easter eggs that tend to pop up while reading. Personally, I didn't want to know too much of this book going in, but it does seem that this particular installment of her world takes place over a large swath of time. We start out first in 1912 back on Vancouver Island, which is definitely a reoccurring location within all of her stories, but we also end up in the future following a colony that exists on the moon. Emily St. John Mandel's style is very much known for its many, many characters and sort of these different threads of existences that come together. So I'm sure that will occur. I'm looking forward to see what I think about this one. I enjoyed, obviously, Station 11 so much. It's one of my favorite books of all time. I liked The Glass Hotel, and I'm curious to see where this one is going to fall in my Emily St. John Mandel ranking. So only one way to find out. The next book I absolutely cannot wait to pick up, and that is The Beautiful Ones by Silvia Morano Garcia, one of my favorite writers out there. She so perfectly combines like historical settings, great characters with like a dash of fantasy. And that combined with her incredible writing just creates some of the most imaginative and beautiful and enchanting stories I simply have ever read, and this one seems like it's going to be no different. This follows our main character, Nina, and she dreams of becoming part of the Beautiful Ones, which are kind of like the top socialites of her area. And this spring marks Nina's chance to join their ranks as she's going to be debuting into society itself. Unfortunately, her debut is not going so well because she has a hard time controlling her telekinetic powers, which makes her kind of the center of a lot of malicious gossip. But when an entertainer named Hector arrives into town, Nina is dazzled. Not only is he telekinetic just like her, but he also travels the world performing his abilities in front of so many audiences that love and adore him. He sees Nina not as a witch, but as a pupil ripe with potential who can study underneath him. And as Nina begins to learn and grow within her power, she also falls in love. But great romances are for fairy tales, and Hector is hiding a truth from Nina and himself that threatens to end their courtship before it has truly ever begun. Again, I love Sylvia Morano Garcia's writing so much, and I also just find her romances and historical settings to just sing. I feel like this is going to be a new fave. And the last book I picked up was also another really good used bookstore find, and that is Crossroads by Jonathan Franzen. I've actually never read a book by Jonathan Franzen. He's obviously very beloved and very lauded generally, but this was the one I decided to pick up and check out first for a variety of reasons. One, my friend Max said he really enjoyed this. Two, structurally, this is actually going to be a series, and how it's going to be released just really called out to me. So I decided to start here. But Crossroads is essentially book one to what is going to be a series by Jonathan Franzen, where each book specifically follows one part of a family, and we're going to follow them through many generations, and like each book follows one specific decade of time, I'm pretty sure. I love family sagas and family dramas, and I feel like this is that on steroids, with each book kind of starting a new chapter in this family's history. I just think conceptually that is so cool, but particularly this is set in the 70s and we follow a variety of characters again within the same family. Max has mentioned that this book has a beauty in its simplicity and really captures that everyday family life and existence. I'm really hoping to love this, and I love books kind of set in that time period. They can be oh so vibey, and I also feel like we have the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, and there's so many distinct moments within those decades. It's going to be so cool to explore that within each book. So I picked up Crossroads. I'm looking forward to starting this and continuing on with the rest of the series as well. Alrighty guys, that is my big book haul. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please let me know down below some books you've picked up recently, as I would love to know, and I will see you soon with another video soon. Goodbye.